Phnom Penh in Cambodia, and this is the first time I've ever visited Cambodia. So I've now been here for a couple of days, and I wanted to make today's video to tell you about some of my first impressions, things I've noticed, things that have sort of surprised me, and hopefully it gives you a bit of a taste as to what to expect if you come and visit this awesome city. So let's do it. Number one thing that I've noticed that is impossible to not notice is the amount of Tuk Tuks around in this city. The streets are full of them. You're always seeing them drive past. They are literally everywhere. They are really easy to book using Grab, or otherwise they'll often offer to pick you up if they drive past you as well. So there's literally so many Tuk Tuks. I've seen a lot of Tuk Tuks around in other Southeast Asian cities, but honestly the quantity is nothing like I've seen here, so heaps of them. They're also super convenient to get around. So Phnom Penh is a pretty big city. It's bigger than I expected, to be honest, but it's still drivable in a tuk tuk. I'm staying in BKK1, which is pretty central in the city, and everywhere I've needed to go has been like a 10 to 15 minute tuk tuk ride. So that's really convenient in terms of modes of transport, and it's also, you know, between $1 and $2 American for everywhere I've needed to go. So super convenient as a mode of transport, and it means that you don't need to worry about getting anywhere because it's super cheap. So I really rate the tuk tuk system. Makes visiting a lot easier. I've been really surprised by the size of the city, to be honest. I expected Phnom Penh to be much smaller than it is, and honestly probably less developed than it is. There is so much here. The skyline is awesome. There's a lot of international food chains as well, like American food chains around. So that, I guess, surprised me after being in some other Southeast Asian cities. Everything's accessible here. So yeah, it's much bigger and much more developed than I expected it to be. So I've been, I guess, pleasantly surprised about the infrastructure. It's been very cool. And so while there's a lot of American chains, things like Burger King and Carl's Jr. and Cold Stone, there's also a lot of other international food in the city. So there's a lot of like Korean food, Japanese food. And so it means that there's a lot of options here in terms of international stuff. So the food's great. Like, I love the Cambodian food as well, which I'll touch on, but the accessibility of like global chains and global food has really surprised me as well. It's very, something that I've been really surprised about and really like about this city is that people aren't very pushy, particularly, you know, people like tuk-tuk drivers will stop and offer to pick you up, and I feel like in some other cities they can be a little pushy or sort of follow you and things, but here you just sort of say no, and in my experience then they just leave you alone. Same as service staff in shops or when you're browsing places, the people offer you help, but they're not over the top. Even at markets and things, they're not over the top, which has been really surprising and a very different experience to some other areas that I've been in Southeast Asia. It's like they offer you help and then they'll take no for an answer. It's really refreshing, it's really nice. Something I noticed really quickly is that there is a lot of service staff in the city, a lot of people working around. So almost every corner, at least within BKK1, has like security guards sitting out the front. But also when you go to shops, there's just a lot of people working at shops and ready to help you. Like a 7-Eleven will have like 5 or 6 people working. There's just a lot of people and service staff, and this makes things so much easier as well. Like, I was at the supermarket and I wanted to buy some fruit and I didn't quite know how to go about it, and before I knew it there was like 3 people around me helping me weigh it and put a sticker on it and buy it. So it makes the whole thing a lot easier when you don't really know what you're doing, is there's always people around to help, which is really good. So it makes it a really easy place to travel because there's always people around that'll help. Something that surprised me as well is the amount of English that's around. I know when I go to other countries that not everywhere speaks English, and that's part of the charm as well, but when you go somewhere where there is a lot of English spoken, it does make things a bit easier as a native English speaker. I've been surprised how much English there is. I've learnt some basic Cambodian because I like to, you know, at least make an effort, and people are so lovely and so nice when you do try to speak Cambodian, but there's enough English that it makes you feel, I guess, more comfortable to navigate stuff and to work things out and to ask for help, which is a really nice benefit, I guess, and just something I didn't expect, and makes it so much easier as a Westerner to navigate things, which is nice. Something I've noticed is just how much street food and small independent vendors are selling around the city, which I love. obviously there's the big, you know, American and international chains and restaurants, but you'll also just see roads and roads just lined with, you know, markets and street sellers and people pushing around their little carts selling a banh mi's or noodles or drinks. And I love that. It's so charming just to see that and to support smaller businesses. So there's just so much good food to try in literally every street. It's very so I can only comment on my own experience here, and I know that everyone's experience in a place can be different, but I've been surprised how safe this city feels. I mean, currently I'm walking around the city with my phone on a gimbal recording this video, and there's been no concerns in terms of people taking my phone or anything like that, any concerns of my belongings or my personal safety. I've read a lot of mixed reviews about this online. I was cautious before I came here in terms of safety. It's always hard to know what your experience is going to be like, and you know what you read. Obviously some people have bad experiences and more likely to talk about it online, so I can't say generally, but I can say from my experience I feel like it's a really safe city, particularly compared to what I expected. I feel very safe here walking around by myself, going to the gym by myself, going out to eat by myself. So yeah, I mean, I'm staying in BKK1, so I don't know if it's the same case everywhere in the city, but so far it feels like much safer than I expected. Okay, so this one might be a little controversial, but it's actually not as cheap here to eat as I expected. I think having spent some time in Vietnam and Thailand and Malaysia recently, I would say this place is probably more expensive than those. They do use US dollars for a lot of prices, and I know the Australian dollar is not very good compared to the US dollar, which definitely comes into it, but still, depending on where you eat, it's likely to be between like $5 and $8 for like a mainstream kind of cafe or restaurant. There's definitely local places you can find food for say $2 or $3 US, but it does just feel generally like it's a little bit more expensive than some of the neighboring countries, for a variety of reasons. And obviously this is from a Westerner perspective, so you know, I don't just travel to get cheap prices or anything like that, but I needed to get more cash out, I think, than I expected to. So yeah, I guess a bit of a surprise. So something that has really pleasantly surprised me is just how beautiful this city is. So there's trees lining all of the streets. It's super green. A lot of the roofs are really colourful, shops are colourful. There's temples scattered throughout the city. Like, it's just a really beautiful city to look at. We're staying in level 21 of an apartment building, and so the view from our window is gorgeous, and it's a beautiful place to live. Even just walking around, there's so much to soak in and look at. So it's a really beautiful city to spend time in. Very green, very lush, very vibrant. So I'm, yeah, really pleasantly surprised by how amazing this city is to look at. So I've never been to a country before that is like dual currency. So the fact that they use US dollars and real here. I might make a video entirely about this because I was kind of confused before I came here as to how it would work. But it has been surprising being in a country with multi-currencies listed on things. So I got out quite a lot of US dollars before we came, and mostly like $1 and $5 notes, which was just like what I read the advice was. I'm glad I did, but real is also still helpful and way more helpful than it is given credit for and accepted in more places. But yeah, it does get kind of confusing converting everything. So I guess I'm surprised about how comfortable I've needed to get in my 4,000 times tables. And generally paying for things in multiple currencies at once can take a bit of getting used to. So that is confusing and interesting. And I'm going to do a video on money because there's a lot to it. So most of the roads around here in Phnom Penh where I've been don't have pedestrian crossings or lights or anything, so you just kind of cross the road. But it's nowhere near as chaotic as I expected it to be. I guess having been in Vietnam recently, it's nowhere near that chaotic. The cars actually drive pretty slow, and I think the Tuk Tuks generally drive pretty slow as well, and so do the motorbikes. So people are kind of assertive in how they drive, but pretty slow, which means it's not that crazy to have to navigate crossing the roads the majority of the time, which is refreshing. I don't feel like I'm risking my life every time I walk across the road here in the same way that I did in some other countries in Southeast Asia. So not too bad. I've honestly been so surprised by how clean this city is. It is amazingly clean on the sides of the roads. Again, I've only been here a few days, but there is like a lot of bins around, which I think helps. Also, the amount of service staff working, there's often just people sweeping the footpaths and like the sides of the roads and stuff. So they do maintain like quite a clean area slash city, but it's great being in a city that actually has like bins and rubbish removal and that's pretty clean. And yeah, I've just been surprised that it's so immaculately clean so far in my experience. I have to mention how impressed I was by the airport. I think it's the most organized and friendly airport I've ever been to. It was super efficient. As an Australian, I was able to get a visa on arrival, so we turned up. There was just a few different lines we had to move through to get the visa done. Everyone was so friendly and so beautiful. I didn't know a word of Cambodian when I turned up, and everyone was so nice. So yeah, absolute points for the airport, the first impression of actually arriving in the country. Second to none, like absolutely amazing. I guess tied to essentially all of the trees and greenery around the city is there's a lot of little birds around, which I think is really sweet. So around there's these tiny little doves and tiny little sparrows that are all over the city, and it just makes it feel so nice having little like birds flying around. So just a little bonus one there. I love animals, so I love seeing birds around the city. So I hope you enjoyed my first impressions. Let me know, like, have I missed anything? Do you agree? Do you disagree with anything that I've said? I'd love to hear your perspectives as well. I know I've only been here for a few days, so I know I don't absolutely know everything about Phnom Penh by any means, so let me know. And if you've liked my video, if you could like it below, subscribing to my channel means the world to me. It's super helpful, so I'd appreciate that. And let me know what more content you want to see from Cambodia. I'm in Phnom Penh for a while, then I'm going up to Siem Reap, so I'd love to hear what more content that you want. And I will see you on my next video. Bye.